Well, welcome. Normally in the fall, the hot issue is how do we spend, or should we spend, or how much of the surplus we have should we spend. This year we got a couple hot articles, so as we roll into the fall, the heat is being turned up on a couple really critical issues. One of them is what we'll discuss tonight, the water company. Should we buy it? Why? And what do we expect? So tonight we've got some guests who spent a few hours every minute of the day trying to figure out the answers to those questions. So for anybody who doesn't know our guests, let's start with introductions.
Thank you, Al. Will Kincaid, Chairman of the Milford Board of Selectmen.
And I'm Jerry Moody, Town Council.
Chris Moore, member of the FinCom.
Okay, first question. Why do we want to buy the water company?
Well, there's probably more than a few reasons, but the first one is probably to better control the quality of the water, the capacity of the water, now and into the future, which isn't to criticize the water company for the way they've done it over the years, but there have been problems, as everybody knows. There was a 2009 crisis. There continue to be problems with quality of the water, and the constraints on the water company are going to be considerably different than the town. The town is going to have much more flexibility, but most importantly, the town is going to have an open process, and the townspeople will, for the first time, through their elected Board of Water Commissioners, through the Board of Selectmen, who will initially appoint them and obviously will be heavily involved, actually have a say in what goes on, be able to make decisions, not just based on finances, not just based on profits, but based on what's best for the people of Milford, and decisions as to how to spend the money, where to spend the money, and how to improve the quality, decide whether or not, well, we're willing to take a rate increase if we get better quality. All these decisions can be made without concerns about profit margin or anything like that, and be done in the open. It's the most important
part. I think you've hit something, your statement about Milford controlling, the decision-making process is profound, because let's give them the benefit of the doubt. Within the operating parameters, they're doing the best they can. But their operating parameters is give the best quality water while returning X dollars to the stockholders.
Like any private company, their primary responsibility is to their stockholders. Our primary responsibility is to the citizens of Milford. Those are both good things. There's nothing wrong with either one of those. But something as crucial and as fundamental as water, I think, should be ultimately in the hands of the people.
Through the process, and I guess without giving details, when I heard that they're not investing at the level we believe they should in the infrastructure, because they're running it as a cash business. Mm-hmm. They expect $10 a year coming out of it.
Right.
So you get to spend everything as long as I get my $10 a year. But as Jerry said, wait a minute, this year we may not need the $10 as much as we need new pipes so that areas in Milford get better water. Quality of water. I mean, we used to take pride in Echo Lake water.
Absolutely.
I don't hear that much anymore.
No, and Jerry touched on. Jerry touched on a lot of good points, and pretty much the whole foundation of where we are right now, from a board standpoint, and from I think a town meeting standpoint when we get there on the floor. But quality was never an issue, at least that I ever remember growing up, until that 2009 dilemma, I guess, issue. But since then, there's definitely quality issues. Now, it can be, just like the folks with the brown water on one side of town get told, well, it may be brown, but it's still healthy enough to drink, which we can get into the ridiculousness of that comment.
That one stuns me. I see on Channel 5 or whatever it was, Milford brown water. These are our neighbors. These are our families.
And being told it's healthy is acceptable. Being told that it's okay to drink and it's healthy, that's never going to be an acceptable answer.
I take a glass, it looks like poopy water, and you're telling me, don't worry, it's okay to drink it. Yeah. Wait a minute. Is this my ninny's department giving me the water? It's supposed to be clean. The Gazette is supposed to be clean.
Right. And I think that's exactly why that story made the news. And I think being told again that it was healthy and that it's acceptable to drink was not an acceptable
But
answer.
that to me is
And the folks that hopefully everyone in this room that, I know I turn on the faucet and it's coming out clear. Certainly doesn't smell or taste like it used to. I hear a lot of people talking about it being overly chlorinated. And tasting
Pool
and smelling
water.
like pool water. And I think we've all heard all of that. So just from that standpoint, something has to change, whether the town of Milford gains ownership
But
of it or.
fundamentally, it wouldn't pass the Caleb test. If you handed Caleb that brown water and said, here,
It's healthy, yeah.
Yeah.
drink it,
Still not going to drink it.
you know the reaction you're going to get.
Absolutely, and this goes back to 2009. Caleb, my son was a year old. A lot of health issues. After months in the hospital, comes home and we get a letter saying, "Don't bathe your child with an immune system problem. Don't have them drink it. Don't do this. Don't do that." My wife, new baby.
Oh.
I dropped $2,000 on a.
But Willie, I don't wanna be
home
mean,
thing.
but
But I want to
you
stress
could.
that. But not everyone can do that.
But I'm saying you could. Thank
Yes.
God, I wish every family in town was in that position,
Mm-hmm.
but they're not. I mean, some of our elderly, we always talk about living on $1,500 Social Security a month.
Mm-hmm.
$2,000 is more than a month that they would have no money.
Absolutely. No, and hey, even in our case, we had to make a decision to do that versus
Well,
something
yeah,
else.
I mean-
I'm still angry about it.
You
Because
should
growing
be.
up, I mean, we drank. I mean, Chris and I live across the street from each other.
Yeah.
We drank our water out of the hoses, everything.
Yeah,
you
there's
know?
no question. And for 40 years of my life, I had always drank that water, and with pride, to be honest with you. I mean, I had kids. I made my kids' bottles with Milford water.
Yeah.
I said to my wife, "Are you crazy? Of course we're going to do this." And then to the same point, well, when that happened, I put in a whole house filter. And in doing that, the filters say on there they should last 6 months. I'm telling you right now, I have to change them every 3 at best. And when you look at them, I have water pressure issues in my house because the filters get so clogged that it affects the pressure in my house.
That's the reminder to do that.
That's
Yep.
exactly. As soon as I see that the faucet's not going as fast as it should, I'm like, "Ooh, I have to change my filters." And in doing research and talking to people who work in, they said the filters that you buy at Home Depot, Lowe's, wherever, they don't stop everything. So the fact that you're seeing that amount is building up there, there's still stuff that gets through, and that's the concerning fact that, as a town, water, I mean, that's a given, or it should be a given that you're going to get good water. And I think that's one of the biggest issues that we brought up, as residents of the town, that caused people to bring forward, like the selectmen, like town council, to say, you know what, there's something we need to do here, and we need to address the situation. And that's kind of what, the leadership of this town has done.
Now, let's look at some of the questions that are coming up. $63 million, oh my God. I mean, in the old days, you could have bought Milford for $63 million. They were thrown in Hopedale.
Yeah, we just
Right.
stunned everyone with the elementary school. Well, this is even more money than that.
Yeah, but it is what it is. It's a price that was arrived at after long-term negotiations and then into a mediation process with Paul Levy, a highly qualified mediator. Brought the parties together from one extreme in terms of the water company's valuation of it to what we were evaluating at, and brought it to this $63 million. And under the law that we're operating under, the 1881 statute, we have a right to acquire the company, but only a price that's agreed upon. Some of the other statutes from that era had set a standard for the price, but ours didn't. We still could have litigated it in the DPU, and God knows where it could have ended up. It could have ended up less. It likely would have ended up a lot more. So that price was one that, when it was finally arrived at, we realized it was probably fair under the particular provisions of law, and one that we believed we could afford to do with the borrowing and the note that the money we have to pay on the borrowing coming in essence out of savings from other aspects of the company's operations that we wouldn't have to pay. So that's how we arrived at that price.
And I
Al,
think,
can I just, and something too that maybe, Jerry, you can help with for the people viewing is the fact that, I mean, that $63 million also equals out to real property,
Right.
treatment, a state-of-the-art treatment center, trucks, tools, I mean,
Yeah.
mineral rights.
Mineral rights.
Mineral rights,
yeah,
water
no,
rights,
the
extremely
water
valuable.
rights.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not even sure how you come to actually
but you know
put
something?
a real price on
Wait a
something
minute.
like that.
Very
anyway.
difficult.
Mineral rights. It reminds
water
me of
rights,
when my darling bride told me, the jewelry I'm buying her is an investment, right? And I laughed. I said, it's only an investment if I'll ever sell it. So when you say mineral rights, what would we ever sell to realize that money? You're gonna sell the mineral rights?
No, but I think there is a product that is associated with the water rights.
We
So
get water.
We get water.
Yeah.
But the value is the value to investors out there. As you may have read in the Globe recently, the other few water companies that are left in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, there are very few left, were owned by a company, largely by a company known as Aquarian,
Right.
which has now been taken over by Eversource. And the value isn't in our ability, we never want to sell it. We
Right.
don't ever want to sell it. But the value is enormous out there in the marketplace of companies that can come in, invest in these, and make money through the rate setting process, through everything else. So the value is significant.
See, to me, the scariest thing is if I was R.H. White, I would hope you blow up this deal. Because then I'll go to Aquarian and say 60, no thank you,
That's a-
80,
Right.
90,
That's a significant risk.
Then you have to add the purchase price onto the rate,
then we pay more.
and you pay even
But
more.
now, the purchase price, we keep hearing $60 million, 63 million.
63.
Is it really?
Yes.
Aren't we going to have to invest more? I mean, what is the real price?
The price is 63 million, but just like when you buy your home, then you're going to do improvements. And in this case, we are clearly going to, I believe the town will invest heavily in the future in significant capital improvements that will begin to address these quality issues that we just talked about. In the water company had a 10-year capital plan, which frankly, our research showed that they really...
They're not doing it.
They weren't doing it, yeah, and we'll leave it at that. Well, we're going to have the ability to make the decisions to do it, and our
I guess,
water
Jerry, my
commissioners will be able to
point
make
is-
those decisions and do it.
We're going to spend $75 million to buy the house and renovate it the way we want.
Over a period of years, yes.
Yes.
So, you know, realistically, the price we're going to pay is $75 million. We're
Well-
going to fund it through a rate increase that's coming. But Chris, you're on the finance committee. Can we afford this?
Well, it's not really the town that's doing it. It's the residents of Milford that have water services. Who's really going to be paying for it? It's not going to be the town of Milford. Okay, that's important to distinguish, because if you own a well, because the ratepayers who pay for water bills, the bond that would pay for this acquisition is paid by your water users. So someone who has a well in the backyard, technically they're not paying for the water company. And that's important for anyone who doesn't have it, who says, I'm not going to pay this $63 million. Well, you're not. It's the people who have water service is going to be doing it, and that's an important distinction.
We're going to mirror exactly what we have with the sewer department, where it's an enterprise fund, it's completely separate, they have their own
But
capital.
So-
$75 million,
Well-
can we afford it?
Well,
Let's just not cloud the
Yeah.
issue
Yeah,
entirely.
yeah.
No, but I mean, realistically,
63
We're
million.
purchasing it for
63 million up front.
That's the hard number
Yes.
to buy.
And what's coming
If we wanted to
down,
run it just the same as it is right now,
It'd be 63.
$63 million would handle
but we
it.
know we don't.
Well, we wouldn't, I hope we wouldn't
But-
be chasing
but wait a
after
minute,
this.
let's
But
say
also,
we
it
didn't
could
buy
be more
it.
than 75 million,
Well,
because
hold-
you're constantly going to be making.
Hold on a
money.
second, we're not going to buy it. We're going
Okay.
to walk away.
Okay.
What's coming? The iceberg. I'm on the boat.
Well, at least a 30% increase.
You're gonna
Bingo.
You're going to get a 30% increase, and again, as we talked, you could end up getting a sale to another party, to another entity that's going to
At
come in for a
best.
bigger increase.
From what I understood, if we're really, really lucky and we don't buy it, at best, we'll face a 30% increase very
In that
shortly.
range.
And none of the improvements will happen.
That's
No
right.
guarantee.
Theoretically, yeah.
Right.
But one way or another, we got 30% coming at us.
Yes.
If we admit we're going to have a 30%, we own it, we can control what that 30% is used for, and we can pay off the 63 plus the 12 that we want over the years.
We'll be able to ensure that that 30%, if our new water commissioners decide that would be the appropriate increase, they might decide 20% enough, or 25%. So it's not a given that we're going to have a 30% increase come January. It's not a given at all. But if there is, it's going to be because they're going to take that money, which is going to be significant, and make those capital improvements that we talked about that are really going to begin the process, slow process, but a process of improving the quality. You know, I've had people say to me, well, the minute we acquire it, all the water's going to be clear. Well, it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to happen over time, and that's why you call it 75 million. I don't like to hear that because it's 63, but
Yeah.
that additional money is going to be come in through that rate increase over the years, and that's going to be what's going to be
But
used to
Jerry-
do those capital improvements.
Only my opinion, personal only. I'd rather go to somebody and say, there's going to be a
Oh, we're
need
going to say that, yeah.
for that 12 million of investment.
That's the narrative.
Period.
Yep.
Yeah. No question.
Now, I can because when you say we're not guaranteed a 30% increase, my gut feeling says if we do nothing, that 30% is coming
you know,
at
based
us.
on, you know, I've handled all these rate cases over the years before the DPO, and it's a complex process and difficult process. And the last rate increase was in 2012. They sought 90%, and they got 53, and that was a battle. That was people outraged by the 53, but I viewed that as a huge success. It was.
Yeah, you cut
Keep
it in half.
cut it almost in half.
Yeah.
Before that, they sought like 40, the 2 years before that, and got 33. This time, in looking at what they filed, and because of what's gone on over the years, the improvements that they have to make by virtue of an administrative consent order and by virtue of their capital plan, by virtue of what they've spent in terms of the rate proceedings and in terms of this, I fear this time I wouldn't be very successful if they're going to get close to the 30%.
And again, Jerry, I know what an admirable job you did cutting it. But when I saw my bill go from $900
I
to
know.
$1,200,
Yeah, it's-
when I'm writing a $1,200 check for the water that quarter,
Right.
it's hard for me to say, such a good job.
I know that. Yeah, I know
You know,
that.
now-
I know.
Well, all of us
Intellect-
don't have 12 bathrooms like you.
It doesn't matter. It went $300 in one quarter. I mean, come on. How do I feel good about this? But yet, it could have been
6.
$300-400 more than that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now,
To get back to your question, though, because you kept asking it, and we kind of went around about, can we afford this? As Jerry has talked about, we talk about the rate structure that we currently have, and that we're looking at a probable 30% increase from the water company. If we acquire the water company and we did the same 30% that they were going to do, so same, we absolutely can afford to acquire the water company and make significant improvements in the infrastructure.
so we can do the 63 and the
Absolutely.
closure years, the 12 that's going to come afterwards, and still afford it as long as
Yeah, because that 12's over the next 10
That's over
years.
the next 10 years. So to answer your question that we kind of went off, can we afford this? Absolutely. There's no question that we can afford
And I
it.
think the real issue that I hit was, we're going to pay it no matter what. That
That's-
30% is coming.
Yeah, an increase is coming, whether it's 29 or 30. And listen, I had one case years ago where they came in looking for 20%, they got 22. Because things changed in the course of the proceedings
Right.
in terms of their tax bills went up, their rate case expense went up. So it's not unusual to have a company actually get more than they originally asked for. That can happen. And this one, you know, has that risk.
And
if you
everything
will.
we've been doing for the last 18 months with them, they're putting that
Well,
bill in as well.
that's
too,
always
so-
the frustration. Yeah, if we don't acquire it, which if the people don't want to, that's fine. But everything they've spent in defending against us, we pay.
We pay.
We pay.
Plus a profit margin.
We always pay a profit margin on top, yeah.
But I think what's key is, and I think we'll touch upon this at one of our meetings, is we'll be accountable to the ratepayers finally, because, you know, unfortunately, we've been on the news for our brown water, and the water company's response is, well, it's safe to drink.
Yeah.
It may be safe to drink, but is it pleasant to drink? You know,
No.
you know, there are people that won't give that to their dog because of the color and the smell and the odor, you know? So what I love about this, you know, process is that we will have that board that's accountable to the voters, and, you know, we'll finally have
Well, that board will be us. It'll be Milford people.
Yeah, it'll be
most likely.
an elected board, 3-member board of water commissioners elected, just as we have a 3-member board of sewer commissioners elected. Initially, they'll be appointed by the selectmen under that legislation.
Well, to get the-
just until April.
To
Come
stub,
April,
till
they'll-
we can have an
yeah,
election.
just until April, and then those 3 can run again, or
You know,
anybody
you
else
think
can.
about it, it was brought out at the executive session that if you look at our sewer commissioners, at least 2 of them joined because
The quality
of an
problem,
issue,
Absolutely.
right? They had brown water that I don't think anybody would say is drinkable, you know, 2-3 feet deep in their basement, and they didn't see the responsiveness. So they got on the board to help fix it.
Yeah,
And I'm hoping that kind of dedication and spirit
yeah.
would serve us just as well in the water company.
And I think, and I'm sure we'll hear a lot more of that, whether it's at the public forums or on town meeting floor, that we have something very similar in operation now with the sewer department, the sewer commissioners, the enterprise fund, and things like that. That, granted, 2 separate systems, but we have something very familiar that's been working now for a long period of time, and without rate hikes on that end for the
And
last
again,
12 years.
Without any rate increases,
they've-
right,
Yep.
zero.
Let's face it, though. Let's say something was dramatically wrong at sewer department. We can say it's a different system, but it's still part of our town.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
You know, I mean, you sit there and say, they still come with budgets to the town. They still go through the process.
And that's what I talked about last night, executive session, that even having the FinCom there, I mean, this is another department.
Right.
Unlike the private water company right now, this is another department in town that will be under the scrutiny and examination of also the fiscal arm of our town and the whole
Well,
financial.
The
team.
other thing too is, what I heard you say is people will call you and say, I have brown water. Fix it. You're the selectman. You're the grand poobah. You're the chairman of the selectmen. Go ye forth and fix it.
Yes.
And what happens when you try and fix it?
Well, I mean, luckily, I've had personally, relatively good experiences contacting the water company. But it hasn't been for brown water. It's been other customer service issues, meter readings, people, a couple of older ladies in town that are home alone, don't know who they're letting in their house. One person I joined and was there when they came and ended up being someone that I've grown up with that works there. Someone else I called and they met them, and so those types of things.
But is
that's
the
a
brown
courtesy.
water gone?
No, the brown water is not gone. And
So
when I did get
your
a phone
success-
call about brown water, I said, I can call, but keep in mind, I have no authority over that like I do other departments. It's just not there.
In
They're
the
a private
future,
entity.
do.
if we own the water company and we have elected board, they still, I mean, you got a little more leverage, even though you can't shoot a board member because they're elected, but they still feel part of this town.
Of course they do.
Well, everything they're going to do is going to be open session. That's a very important part of this. It's all going to be in the open, where, again, I'm not being critical of the water company, but when they do it, it's inherently not in the open. That's the way a private business operates. So these people are going to be operating in the open at public meetings where people can come down, express their views. The sewer commissioners now meet at the town hall, and that works, and people get involved when they have problems. That opportunity, which has never existed, is now going to be there.
Well, I
And
mean, the appearance.
I just want to add too that I think that also the professional courtesy among elected members and things like that it very much exists. We have a lot of fiefdoms in Milford.
Yeah, but are they really?
No, they are.
No, but
I
I'm
mean,
saying they're not run. If the sewer commission really has a problem, the selectmen bring it up.
No, and I think we're going to say the same thing.
Yeah.
I mean, by legal authority, I mean, we had the
Yes.
Board of Assessors at our meeting last night. They are responsible for their staff. I am not responsible for their staff. Our board isn't responsible. They are independently elected, and I very much want to respect that. But I get calls about the parks. I call the park commissioners. They've all been terrific, and we have a great communication. Sewer department, same thing. So I would expect, the highway surveyor, another, I mean, in charge of all our roads, independently elected.
Yeah.
You call him, we have a conversation, he helps, we fix something. In the end, the customer's happy.
But take,
I expect
you
the
got
same thing
Scotty,
with an
and he's
elected-
doing it because he's a good guy, but at the end of the day, if he wants to get his trucks, he wants to get his funding, he knows he's got to go in front of town meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And if every department rose up against him, it would be much harder for him. So
Absolutely.
he's part of.
It's true, but I mean.
But I don't want to just put the negative spin
That's
on it.
right.
I want to put it that
And-
these people who are elected want to do the right
Right.
thing.
That's right. And Will brought this up at the meeting the other night. These are the people who are right next to you Saturday morning on the soccer field. Their kids play with your kids, or whoever the water commissioners are. Or they're in line with you at Jeans getting a sub, or whatever. These are the people of your community that you know. They're not going to, I don't want to say not treat you right, but they're part of town. They're going to see you every day. Not only do they have to answer to you at the ballot box, which they will, but also on a daily basis. I mean, and as Jerry says, at open session, they're not going to sit there and say, forget this, we're not redoing Water Street's pipes. You're going to see that, and I can't imagine
Well,
that
I mean,
anyone.
That's the other thing, the image. You see it go out to bid. And I'm sorry, Jerry, if you give the bid to your kid every time,
Right, probably going to get it.
I'm going to assume that, the Moody Junior Construction
You have a good
Company
shot.
is the best.
Probably
And their
is.
work, but
Yeah.
if Moody Junior always wins, I don't know that, I don't feel that
Yeah, it's one another good thing that'll happen. Everything that the water commissioners do in terms of significant improvements, major, minor, medium size, is going to have to go to real bidding process where every company in the area is going to have a right to bid on it. Where that's not the case now. The water company follows a DPU-approved bidding process, but it's very, very limited. And yeah, you're right. In RH White Construction is frequently, if not more often than not, the successful bidder, and which isn't to criticize their work.
Because why wouldn't you?
I'm hoping that if we were running it, that RH White will be bidding on the work in Milford.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because they know the system.
Yeah.
So I hope they are a successful
gonna
bidder.
have to
But they're going to
earn-
have to be
They're
the
going to
low
have to
bidder.
earn the business.
Yeah.
Right.
And I just wanted to piggyback on that. I've heard concerns that because the town will acquire the water company, we'd have to pay a prevailing wage. Well, it turns out that what they're paying is
Aren't they
pretty.
paying prevailing rate?
They're
paying
paying a
prevailing
prevailing
wage now.
wage as it is. So there's not going to be that requirement to pay extra for these construction services. We're already paying those rates already.
They do a lot of public work in other communities, and so those companies like that do both public and private work typically pay the prevailing wage anyways, because you can't 1 week pay your employees this rate and then cut them the next week.
Yeah.
So
I'm sending you to Town A.
Yeah, it
So
doesn't
you're
work.
going to earn 30% less than
That's tough.
Town B.
Well, I think also, even when you compare, if some folks want to question or critique the prevailing wage question, I mean, something you brought up, I mean, again, I'm in my first term, but this conversation's been going on for some time now, that because the Milford Water Company is private, they pay for a whole bunch of things that we won't have to pay for, whether
no
it's state
question about it,
taxes,
right.
federal
Well,
taxes.
it's a big part of this.
Let's assume.
Profit margin,
Big part.
things
But
like
really,
that.
let's assume they're running it perfectly, the most 100% efficiency, all that good stuff, and we'll do no better. Well, we hit the profit margin right off the top and the taxes.
By virtue of the DPU rate setting system, they're entitled to make a return on their investment. So when they invest $100, they're allowed to make a return on that $100 each and every year. So that's the premium that we pay on the. A lot of people have said to me, "Well, we don't know what's in the ground, and what are we going to take responsibility for those pipes?" But they've come to understand that we are responsible for those pipes or not. We pay for the repair of those pipes through the rate setting system, and we pay a premium on top of it. If we own it, we're just going to pay for the repair. We're not going to pay a premium.
And that's one of the biggest concerns people have
It
is,
is.
my God,
Yeah.
Jerry, you have no idea how much it's
right.
going to cost us to maintain 100 miles of pipe.
But we're the ones who are paying it right now.
And
So
my answer was,
And
you're
have that
right.
for-
Yep.
Forever.
The only difference,
Yes.
is it takes you 2 years for the bill to come. Is
Yes.
really all it comes. Really,
But
that's
it
the
comes
only
with a
difference.
profit. See, my problem
Absolutely.
is, I think they're right to say, Jerry, you cannot know what it's going to cost.
No.
Whether you
Yeah.
own it or not. All you can know is, if a pipe breaks, whether we own it or not, within 24 months, we pay for
We're
that
going to be
repair.
paying for it. I mean, they have to. There's a lag with water companies in terms of rate setting, so they do have to pay cash up front before they begin to recover it from the ratepayers. But over time, and the way the system works, they're going to recover everything
But
that
if
they
a pipe
paid plus
breaks-
the premium.
And then some.
Simple Portuguese English. If a pipe breaks, who pays for it?
We do.
Ratepayers,
do.
of course, yeah.
I mean,
No matter how
that-
you slice it.
Yep.
Any way you put nice words around it, if something goes poof in the night, we're going to
pay for it ultimately.
eventually.
If their copier breaks in their office, we pay for it. There's nothing that happens at the Milford Water Company that they don't in turn turn on to the taxpayers.
goes into the rate-
taxpayers.
goes into
It's-
the rate
It's their
system, yeah.
cost of doing business, whether it's buying paper for their office, it doesn't matter.
No, and-
We pay for that.
and they have the
as
right
well
to
as
do
any
that,
business.
so why wouldn't
Plus the
Exactly.
profit.
Any business that is run, you pay for it. When you buy Coca-Cola at the thing, you're paying for
And see, this
their
is the
janitors.
part
It
I get
doesn't
a kick
matter.
out of. Are we not giving them an incentive to spend more money?
Yeah, I don't know. But I don't see them doing that. If there's
No,
been,
but-
been a problem in the past, it's probably been the opposite of that. They haven't spent enough money on capital improvements and other things. That's been more of the problem. And sometimes that's been a problem. Again, I can't, delve into it too much, but of the time lags between rate increases, they historically in the past have gone 5, even 7 years without a rate increase. And that might sound good, except that meanwhile, things aren't getting done.
But what
Capital
that-
improvements aren't being made.
But what that ends up doing is, for ratepayers, you talked about how your bill went from $900 to $1,200. Because they're waiting so long to do their rate increases, it's one big chunk. versus if the town has control over it, we can do it small gradual increases so that that bill is 3, 4, 5% more each year.
Again, did I hear right when they said the average in Massachusetts is over time normalized out to 5%?
5%.
Yeah, yeah.
So every year, if we do no better, no worse, we'll see a 5, after we get that big slug of 30, which is coming. I feel like, I'm looking up at the ski slope, that big avalanche, it's already started.
Right.
There's nothing I can do to stop
And
the
that's why I
avalanche.
think talking about that is so important.
Yeah.
Because like Jerry said, maybe the Board of
might
Water
say,
Commissioners will get
look-
together, do the math, dive into it and say, hey, we only have to do it by this
Twen-
much.
But it's 20%.
Right.
Okay.
But if we talk about the 30, we know that that's
That's
the
honest.
max.
That's
It's not going to be 5. We need a slug of
You know
money.
what? It kind of goes against a lot of our, me running for this position, Mike being the newest member running for this position, Bill beforehand, many years before. We were all in a different place than we are right now.
Yes.
And I think I can say that about all three of us, because I'm actually pretty positive about that, that when we talk about years ago taking over a private water company, I was like, geez, why would we ever do that? I mean, again, 2009, everything changed. Now, you tell a different story because you've been in your position
Yeah,
for
I've
so long.
been-
You talk about that.
Right.
At one point, you've mentioned that at one
I've
point this
talked
was
about-
going to be discussed.
Yeah, I've talked about it. It would always come up over the many, many years, even before my time. So I've been here 38 years. And long before me, this was coming up with rate cases, and the town would get a big increase. And there was a committee that was formed in the 70s that was actually still active into the 80s that was advocating for acquisition of the water company. Every time we had a rate increase, the selectmen would then talk about the possibilities. So you can go back and look at the old news clippings. It was always talked about, but there wasn't that final impetus. Will's right, came with 2009, really. That's what made this become more serious. It used to be talked about after a rate case, and then it would sort of fall away.
But we were
Not
having, because
now.
I remember more than a decade ago when I went to you, Jerry, and said, we haven't raised the price of water, because we own water that we sell to the water company.
Oh, and that, yes.
That
that's
they
right.
then
On
charge
the Clarks
us for.
Island wells, yes. They lease
And I
it from
said,
us.
it's been 1964.
69, actually.
Or 69.
Yep.
And you looked at me and said, go ahead, increase the price. All you're doing is adding 10% on top, and they're going to pass it right back.
It goes into the rates. So boards have decided over the many, many years that there was no point in raising that rate. Because, yeah, we might get $5,000 more per year in the tax rates, but that'll actually come from the rate payers.
$6,000 out of my left
So
pocket
it didn't really make a lot of sense.
as a ratepayer.
Yeah, so we've left that alone.
But again, when I think of being handcuffed, okay, I couldn't raise what I'm charging them, because then within 24 months, they'd add they would have said, great, raise it, double it.
Right.
You'll force us to double and
That
add
would be-
twice the profit and come back and take it out of your pocket.
Passed right on, in every single rate case has the charge for the Clarks Island wells. Whatever rental we charge them is right there in the rates.
Now, people ask the question, how many towns, there's 300 odd cities and towns.
351, yeah.
351. So are we the only one that wants to buy our water company?
No, that's, we were talking last night, Hingham Hall is a joint system, and one of the two, I think it's Hingham, is trying to break out of that, and so they're trying to acquire their aspect of it, and that's in litigation, and I guess that's a mess. Oxford has been for a number of years fighting this. They've been to court, been to the Supreme Judicial Court. That's a mess. They haven't been able to accomplish it. There's only, I think, 4 substantial systems in the Milford, Hingham Hall,
There's
Oxford.
4 out of
maybe Millbury.
350.
That's all that's left.
There's 4
Yeah.
that are still private.
There's smaller ones. I mean, I'm talking about really small ones of a couple of hundred people.
North,
But-
in
Yeah.
Northbridge, there's
Yeah.
one village that they
Yes.
kind of own, and they
You've got some of those.
and they ma- and
Twice
you know
a
what
day they
village
get
is
a
it?
bucket of
The White
water.
Village.
You know, for-
I was gonna
Milford
say,
Water
they
Company.
get a bucket of water, they put it in the pump, and they're done for
There's
the
some
day.
as small as just 100 customers. Small, private, family-owned little
So when
companies.
you look and you say, less than 1% of the cities and towns, or around 1%.
It's
for
a,
one and a
it's a
half.
19th century model. It was created in the late 19th century in many cities and towns that began for the first time to have a water
But
supply.
Jerry, walk us back.
I can
why?
walk you back to the 19th
To
century.
19th century.
You-
Walk us back and say,
You know, it was a
how
different
did
world.
a private person, how did I get to own a water company?
The way that happened with most, and the way it happened in Milford, and this is not to criticize our ancestors, but the legislature created these water companies and gave them, and the water rights and everything that flows with it, the franchise to certain powerful interests in the various cities and towns.
Political order.
Yeah. In the 19th century context, it was probably considered good business. Water, supply systems were new, and they thought that this private way of doing it, to give that franchise right to wealthy people who could then build it up and sell it, and maybe it was a good model, I don't know. But most cities and towns over the last 150 years have taken them over.
I mean, I could see somebody saying, we got this newfangled idea of running water. Let's put people who are good businessmen
That's right.
and
Of course.
women
That's what-
in charge.
That's what they did.
Or can float it while they're going through
Right,
their
and they have
growing
money and they
pains.
have
Yeah.
assets. So, kind of like things that happened a couple hundred years ago, it might have made
It made
sense
sense
back
then, but it's now maybe has been long past the time to change
And
that
if you
system.
look at it, all but 4 towns and 2 places with buckets have clawed back.
Yeah, pretty much.
And to me, that was one of the biggest things. I was extremely surprised when we started this process, and I was told about the very small number, and I was totally stunned by that. And then when you sit there and think about it, what are the other 98%? What do they know that we don't know? And why is it that we haven't done this? And and they, at some point or another, since that time, went ahead and did this process. And obviously, with us being one of the last lingering towns to do it, it's a big decision. But obviously, everyone else has decided to do it, and they're not crazy.
Who knows how town meeting itself is going to vote in the end? I think, based on my own very unofficial, unscientific polling, because this is a conversation wherever I go, because I want to know what people are thinking. There seems to be, at least in the folks that I've discussed this with over the last year or so, there's an inherent belief that collectively we should have control of our own water source. It's a different time now. I just think whether you're the most liberal, the most conservative, the most pro-business, some people, I got a brother-in-law that, would nationalize everything. God love him. We get along great, but he's about as socialist as you get.
That's what Vermont does.
But either way, everyone across the spectrum thinks that we should have control of our
whether you're
water.
conservative or liberal or whatever
This is not that
flavor
kind of
you
issue.
are,
Yep, it isn't.
No.
brown water,
That's what I mean. It's
it
not
seems
that
to be
issue.
the great
Absolutely. Because
neutralizer.
There
right?
are people that do not think, and there was a couple people in the room last night, quite honestly, that don't think a public entity should be taking over a private entity.
See, private enterprise
But-
works great when you have a free marketplace
Mm-hmm.
in competition.
Yeah.
If you don't like Milford Water Company water, what are your options? You can't hook up to Bellingham water. You can't hook up to, Hopkinton water.
Mm-hmm.
You're stuck with this water supply unless you want to bathe in bottled water. That's what
But
you're
it's
going
a
to have.
monopoly. At the end of the
Yeah.
day,
Yeah.
it's a monopoly. You're not working under, okay, if I don't like Shaw's, I go to Stop and Shop.
Exactly.
But they're not a monopoly. I got a choice. I don't know that I have a choice with the water.
No, and just through this whole process and I'll tell you one thing, and I just, because we have 20 minutes left, I want to get this in at least one. The team Jerry brought forward, I personally have been super impressed. The
They did a
group
great
you've been
job.
working with has been
they're fabulous,
unbelievable. And I know I've learned a lot.
How much have we spent, really?
Oh, we've almost exactly. The initial 260,000, we appropriated 400 more. We probably got about, so what's that total? I can't do that math, Portuguese math.
So you got
660.
Seven and
We will have spent that plus. We'll have to spend more before we're done.
We'll have spent $750,000
Probably before we're done.
doing the due diligence.
Just to get to the point of acquisition.
Which is a lot of money,
it's a lot of
but
money.
compared to
There's no
a
question.
$63 million purchase.
But Willie, what went a long way with me was everybody was talking about we're going to have a special town meeting in February because we want to do this. When you and Buck got up and said, we will not do this until we're ready, that made me feel better. Because much as I believe we
I
should
actually
do
heard
it,
that a lot, and I actually really appreciated that. And I think we all did as the team collectively, because we started getting so much information, and we just wanted more and more. And we were probably a major pain to Jerry
Oh,
and the
major
team.
pain.
But we
Major
just, I know even me, I just wanted more. I couldn't believe this stuff
Oh,
that they just were able to
In
examine.
what way? As
Well,
we
think about
find
what
out.
you know now versus 6 months ago.
Oh, it's
Unbelievable.
incredible.
Completely
like-
different story.
It's a very different story, and it's very good that we took the time
Yeah.
to do the due diligence, to look into all these little
And-
issues.
and I
even
believe-
even at town meeting, I think we're probably going to hear from a couple people say, 6 months ago, you said it was going to cost this much under the current rate structure, and you lied.
And that's why-
And you know what? That's not the case. And
But
I'm very
Willie-
comfortable, and I think we all
Willie,
are.
that's why,
explaining that
personally,
we don't want to
I
just
wanna
take it
tell
over
people-
and keep it the way it is right now.
It's going to be 75 eventually.
Well,
Deal with it.
yeah,
But it's
that's
going to
the way
be
you wanna
that
approach it.
no matter
40
what.
years down the road, it's
Yeah.
going to be 100
I
because
was
we're
gonna
going
say,
to
'cause
keep
you're gonna
investing in it.
continually.
Continuous
But that's my
investment.
point,
Yeah.
to say, wait a minute, I don't want status quo, because it
No.
ain't working.
No.
I
I don't
don't
want it if we're
want
gonna- if it's gonna be
63
status quo.
million
Yep.
in brown water. I'd much rather deal with the fact that we got 30%. I'm looking up, the snow's coming, it's an avalanche, I'm gonna get hit, and Jerry, I'll buy on that maybe it's 25. Who cares?
yeah.
There's an avalanche coming.
Yeah.
Deal with it, but at least I know that if I hunker down, when the snow blows by, I'll have transparency, I'll have money being invested the way we need it, and god dang, we better not have any more brown water.
Well, you have transparency and hopefully clear water.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
Because
it's-
again,
it's-
just
it'd be
like
nice.
those 5 or 6 families on the Fox 25 news clip about the brown water, I can't imagine any of them would complain, and I don't know any of them, would complain about us taking it over with a rate hike so we can fix it so they don't ever have that problem again.
Yeah.
I can't imagine that, maybe we're on the other side of town or a block away where they're not having brown water, maybe it's not that much of a concern for folks, but when you have brown water coming out of your faucets,
But to your point, Will, it's not even just the brown water. So the people who don't have the brown water, and you say it tastes like pool water, and like I said,
I don't drink
we,
it.
we live across the street from each other, so
Yeah.
we know how it is. That chlorine can't be good for you. I'm sorry, it may be clear, but what they're putting in it to make it not brown can't be good for you. And by improving the water quality also means we don't have to chlorinate it in the manner that they're doing right now. So that has to be good. So even if it's not brown water, your water is going to improve in just the taste, the quality, everything
But,
else.
Chris, remember when cable first came? We asked a question, how much of Milford is not cabled? And we kept asking and kept asking.
Yep.
I don't care if you want Dish or whatever, but we wanted, as a town, you to have an option. I asked a question almost a year ago. How much of Milford is not offered town water? Because at the end of my street, there's a whole series of houses, they were told they can't have town water. Now, whether they want it or not, I'd like to know every sector of Milford that doesn't have it and just know why. There's granite ledge and it'll cost $9 billion. Okay, then we got an answer. Some of the houses that were offered cable were 600 feet off the road and they said it cost you $1,000. I said, fine, I'll get satellite.
And that's usually the case, as to the water. People that don't have water is because at some point in time, they were told by the company, and I don't mean this negative, so the company, well, to give you water, you're going to have to invest $1,000, $2,000, and they said, no, we'll just deal with the well. That's common.
But I'm okay with that.
And that won't change with the town. People have that same
But at least you'll get an
reaction.
answer.
Yeah,
What-
we're going to know the system once we own it. We're going to know the
What
system.
annoys
well.
me is when I ask the question, and years ago, I asked, why did my usage spike? Because you get the 11,000 cubic meters of water. Well, I'm one of those data nerds, and I plot every quarter what I used. I don't know why, I just do. And I saw it jump 40%.
Yep.
I wrote a letter, and I was told, you must have a leak. I said, well, then how come it unleaked at the end of this quarter? This one quarter jumped
Right.
40, 50% usage, and I don't think we bathed 50% more times or whatever. But the next quarter went back to the same that it back then, 19 straight years. What annoyed me was the arrogance of them saying, you must have had a problem. We'll change your meter. Well, wait a minute. Why are you changing my meter if you think I had a problem?
Right.
And it just felt like they were insulting my intelligence because they wouldn't give me a straight answer. And I would hope if we have Milford people running it, that we can lean and say, I want an answer.
Well, you got to hope you're going to have people in office who are going to give you straight answers. That's really the key.
Yeah. And make customer service, whoever's answering the phones, and
primary,
talk to
yeah,
people
primary responsibility. You hope.
What do you think the biggest challenge will be?
at town meeting.
No.
Oh, just in general of having the
We
water
bought the
company?
water company.
Well, transitioning it is going to be, that transition, I mean, as I've said before, if we wouldn't know where the light switch is right now. So trying to retain as many of the employees as we can, the people that really run it day to day, ensuring that our new water commissioners are in place hopefully before the transition date, which should be January 1, and have found a good manager to run the system who understands it and understands the technical aspect of it. I don't mean, you know, a typical kind of manager. I mean a real professional in this particular field. They can make sure that those switches can be turned and nothing will go wrong. And then begin the process of developing a long-term plan for improvements.
See, I think the other challenge is going to be setting the right expectations for exactly what you said. We're buying it. We don't have to spend any more money, and our rates are going to go down by 30%.
Yeah, no, that's
But see, I
not
think,
going to
Jerry,
happen.
that's what worries me, is that people are going to say, you know, you said 63, but now you're investing in the infrastructure.
Well, I think that's why and I think people are going to say that regardless, because you can't always capture your audience.
No.
But, I mean, the people that are deciding this are the 250 people on town meeting floor. However, up until that point, we have letters going out to all the households. We have another publication going out in the Milford Daily News and the Town Crier that goes to every business and household. I mean, we are talking to doing shows like this, we are talking to the masses. And I think it's very important for those people, because I know I've been a town meeting member since I was 18 years old. Very rarely did I ever get a call from someone saying, I don't know where you stand on this, but I hope you'll do this. I hope people are going to make those phone calls. Because if not, you walk in as a town meeting member with your own opinion and your own philosophy.
Well, we start, 6 people will now be informed by watching the show.
7, I think.
7, okay.
That's what I hear.
But then you get Town Crier reaching out to what, 8,000 homes?
8,000, 14, yeah, 18,
Right?
8,000 homes and
So
14,000 businesses
there's
and homes.
8,000 homes, so you're going to get a big chunk. You know, you've got forums coming up, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So there's no reason
People are
shouldn't be
informed now. I mean, we sent out mailings to, before the first forum, to all households. We had that forum, which was, certainly people understood it, what it was. It was fairly well attended. It's continued on. It's gotten huge publicity. There's going to be another forum. This show, when this shows, I mean, there's really gotten a level of attention that it's kind of unusual for any one issue in this town.
Another misconception out there, they're being sneaky. That Jerry Moody and those
watch
selectmen,
out for him.
they're having closed meetings. Why aren't they having open meetings?
You know, this is dealing with very difficult negotiations over the purchase of not just real estate, but major assets. So the law allows us to deal with that in executive session. And up until very recently, we really would be remiss not to be doing that, because we haven't known whether the thing was going to fall apart. You certainly never want to negotiate on television, telling the other party exactly what your negotiating position is. That would be absurd. You know, we could have been in a situation where we're going to go to the DPU and litigating this thing, and to be sitting on television telling the other side exactly what our positions were. It's beyond absurd.
Jerry,
you can't do that.
I remember when we did the cable contract 20
Right.
years ago.
Right.
It drove me crazy that our meetings had to be open. I'm sitting there saying, okay,
Yeah.
this is like Belichick saying, we're going to run.
Yeah.
The next 3 plays are 2 passes and a run.
Yeah.
And then saying, hey, they were ready for us.
Yeah.
You know, so
Go figure.
it wasn't, in my mind, you being sneaky or trying to hide something, but
know.
why would you tell, I'm going to run?
Right. Well, that's what you'd be doing if you did all of this in open session. You know, it's too bad in some ways that you can't. It would be better if we could, but it would just be counterproductive, because, you know, we wouldn't be at the, if we're dealing in open session from the beginning of this process, we would never agreed on a $63 million price.
Well, I mean, imagine if you were negotiating for a purchase of a home, and the sellers knew that you were, you know, you could afford or willing to pay, you know,
$100 to the house.
They're not going to accept anything less than $100.
No, I only want you to pay 90.
Yeah, exactly. So you know, it's one of the reasons why we have to go in executive session is how much can we afford? Well, we can't let them know what our maximum
But
limit is.
even when you go into arbitration, your strategy,
Yeah.
I remember the cable. The first person that always requested the tape was Comcast.
Sure.
They wanted the tape of that meeting because it was an open session.
Yep.
Well, great. Let's see. Willie's going to say this, then Jerry's going to say that, and we'll have Bill Buckley ready to say. Should we prepare for that?
Right. Yeah.
And Al, I'll tell you, I was in, a good portion of the executive session, and I can't even tell you how committed and bothered it was that the selectmen were not able to share the information. Every meeting, the three of them would be like, the public, we would love to be able to tell them this information. I was in there, and they were very adamant about having these informational sessions, providing any information that Jerry said, you know what, this is okay, or the lawyer said this is okay to pass along. And the selectmen, like I said, were extremely diligent about giving information when they could, setting up informational sessions, making sure that the due diligence was done and that all the information was passed along to the public as it was able to be done. And like I said, I couldn't compliment the three selectmen more and Jerry about getting that,
See,
that work
having
done.
you on there, I mean, let's face it, the 15 of us were nervous.
As you should have been.
I mean, we're going to spend how much? And town meeting's going to look at the FinCom and say, you're supposed to be watching our money. But having somebody from the FinCom on there saying, guys, it's being handled well. They are crossing the T's and dotting the I's, they're doing it well. Put a lot of us, our attention level down.
Well, I'll tell you that every meeting that I went to, and you said it last night, is setting new expectations. It was amazing that every single meeting that we had throughout this whole process, or that I was part of, expectations got reset almost every meeting. Every new bit of information that was given, it's almost like a new expectation was set. That's how much information was coming in and how it would change in the opinion of everybody in the room. And we even talked about that there were many people in the room that absolutely positively did not think that acquiring the water company was the right decision or anything they want to look at. And a lot of people have come around in different opinions, and now they're like, I don't know how in the world we could not acquire it at this time. So you talk about people making a complete 180, having the information that the team brought forward and finding out what a benefit to this town it would be to acquire the Milford Water Company for the residents of Milford. That information we didn't have before, and we have it now.
But instinctively, it goes against everything I believe that a public entity can run better than a private. Until you throw in that curveball that it's a monopoly.
It's a monopoly, and that's why it's regulated. It has to be regulated. These kinds of public utilities generally are, in every state, are regulated to some degree, and that's why. So it's not completely out of
The
control.
cable contract
Yeah.
always said non-exclusive.
Right.
And
And
for
we
how
now
many
have-
years we were begging,
Trying
hey,
to get
we
another
want
one in,
Charter,
yeah.
we want
Right.
Verizon, we want somebody else
Right.
in. Not that the rates, I don't think, have ever gone down, but I really believe by having the competition,
They stay aligned.
They
Just stay aligned. They watch each other, and I think that has probably kept them lower over the years than they would have been if it had always been one company.
Right.
So
There's
that's been a benefit.
And there's been a number of skeptics on our team. And, you look around the room now, and I don't think there's anyone that has any doubt now, after all the meetings, all the due diligence, that we shouldn't move forward. We should.
Well, I'll tell you, and I'm glad you said that, Mike. I just am very curious about the FinCom, how that's gonna
I don't
pan
think
out.
so. Not after last night.
Just the dialogue and the debate, if there is any. I'm very curious, and I can't wait to be there and see that, because that is the next round of this.
Yeah, but I think realistically,
hear-
if you look at it, last night it became so obvious that it's coming. Something breaks, we pay. We don't know exactly how it was done because we can't control.
Yep.
They're working under a different paradigm than we are. You brought it up at the beginning, Jerry. Good water at the lowest possible price. Okay, they're saying, with this spend rate, give us the best water you can,
At that rate.
At this spend rate.
Yeah.
give us the best water you
Right.
can. Because I'm going to believe that the water company people, they all want to do the best job they can.
Yeah.
But here's the boundaries.
Right.
I want my $10.
Right.
What you do with all the money before that, cool. You're taking that off
Yeah.
the shoulders of those employees, because now you're saying, hey, go make your case. Is a 30% increase coming? Yep. How are we going to spend it? We decide.
You asked earlier what one of our challenges might be acquiring the water company. Well, changing the culture of the employees, that might be a challenge because they have been, over the years, they've been in this private business for-profit entity culture, and now they have to change to a more customer service-centric culture where they need to be responsive to people, not worry.
And I think a lot of that will come back to what Jerry said about the transition, because I know the next challenge, if this all goes into fruition and the town meeting votes to acquire the water company, I gotta tell you, I'm actually very nervous about even those initial appointments to water commissioners, because granted, people can run for it and it can become a popularity contest or whatever it is, equal to any other elected position, but I know whoever I vote for, on never mind whatever the knowledge base is or whatever we're going to be looking for, the biggest thing that I want to see in that board are people who have the time to be there.
Right.
I work 40 miles away, home during the day, usually accessible, but I'm away, I come home. Being a selectman is part-time for me. I'm hoping that we can find water commissioners, and we may not be able to find 3 of them, that have time.
That's
I
more
want them to have a
full-time than
desk
part-time.
down there.
Yeah.
I want them to learn
Huge
where the
learning
lights
curve.
are. I want them to set the example. I mean, whether, I mean, I don't know what to
Willie,
compare it to,
To answer your question.
but this isn't just gonna be somebody who
We haven't had a
think
FinCom
it's a
meeting,
good
so we
person.
can't speculate with data. But if you're presented with no real alternative, walk away from this deal and Aquarion will pay 80, 90 or more, and then charge us back.
Right.
Okay, so my gut feeling is, town meeting has always been very, very pro-Milford,
Yes.
and they've always done the right thing by Milford. The FinCom certainly tries to. You're not giving me an option. You know what I mean? The 30%'s coming.
You're right.
The model isn't working, and we're just going to perpetuate a non-working model.
And that's why I'm glad you said that, because for me it was different, because I saw the whole thing evolve. So my opinion began to change from I don't know to where I am now, where we definitely need to do this. So it was good to see you two come in and the rest of the FinCom members get a complete update, and all of a sudden everyone who walked out of that room said, this is a no-brainer.
Oh, you heard it.
So
This sucks. But it sucks a whole lot less
Yeah.
than if we do nothing.
Right.
yeah.
We're going to get hit with a bigger increase.
Yeah.
Not something, hey, let's be happy. But to get hit with a big increase and then perpetuate a system that doesn't work, you know.
No, this is one of those examples where it really is about the greater good. And I know I don't get a chance to say that very often, but I think this is that important.
You know, every time we talk about elections, referendums, things in Milford, we talk about them, and I've always promised I will never ask you to vote yes or no, vote for or against somebody. But as always, I'll beg you, be informed, especially town meeting members. This is too critical of an issue. Get out there, vote, let your town meeting members know your opinion, because this is really, really critical. I don't want to look at anybody with brown water and say, close your eyes, it's healthy. It just doesn't make any sense. But you have to really, in your heart, vote the way you think it should go down, whether or not we should buy the water company, and then let the town meeting members know. So as always, maybe Jerry's right, as always, but
Sometimes he's
7
wrong.
people, not 6. We'll say good night, God bless. And let's just hope that one way or another we have clean water for our kids. Good night.
Not too long since I've been home.